Hey everyone, how's it going? Octopus here, and welcome to another video of Star Rail. I'm going to be breaking down every single light cone for every single setup that there is when it comes to the hunt, erudition, destruction, so on and so on. And I'll tell you which one's the best one, what works with the characters, go into detail of how the damage works, and what situations would be better than others, especially because you're going to have to, or not have to, but you're going to want to have more than one setup for each character. Like, this is single target, this is double. This works in this situation, this one doesn't. So it's not just like, this is best. This is best in this situation, so on and so on. So hopefully you guys enjoy the video. It's very in detail as much as I can right now, and then somewhere down the line I'll update it as the game updates as well. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Alright, so let's do this. Abundance, this is your healing class. There's only two healers in the game at the moment, and that is Natasha and Bailu. Bailu is the character on this card, and Natasha is the character on this card. For most of this video, the character on the card usually means the best card in some situations. But take this in consideration that you are going to run multiple cards. And here is a really good example of this. So yes, if you get this 5-star, it's really, really good. But you got to realize that you're not going to be able to get multiple copies of it. So whatever you have here is what you get. The extra 18% in max HP, outgoing healing 12%, and then you got additional damage to an outgoing value on an enemy. Really good, really solid. Once you max it out, the stats are the highest for HP, but not everyone's gonna get the 5-star, and it's the only 5-star here. So it kind of makes sense that this works no matter what, especially on the character that it's for, but it will work on Natasha as well. Now, we're gonna have 4 stars. What is the best 4-star? These two right here. This one is also situational because of moments where you're going to give a ton of energy to a random ally on your team. And I would say that this has its place in multiple areas, especially when you have characters like Dawn who can restore their own energy up to like 95 and they're missing 5 energy. They can benefit from being beside a tank that taunts, so AoE skills will hit them and they have their ult up in 3 turns. Or you have your healer run this and then they get their energy that they need plus their 3-turn rotation. And if you're super lucky, you can even make a lot of characters end up doing their ult in 2 turns. So quid pro quo is very, very good in my opinion. But for most majority of the content, I'm going to be running post-op conversation as my #1 choice. And that's because it just straight up has flat stats. You don't have to do anything condition-wise, you're just doing it. Increases the wearer's energy by 16%, which for Natasha, you're literally pushing Q every turn. And then when people get hurt, you're ulting. I barely ever use her E skill just because I only use it to dispel. Natasha's really good for that. She has a skill that dispels a debuff like ice or manipulation where you're actually attacking your own teammates. You get rid of those, or your character's locked out and they can't use their ult, and Natasha will fix that. So when you do this, you're only using your ult and outgoing healing when they use their ultimate by 24%. Natasha, straight up very good. And the other choice is perfect timing. And I would say this is a really solid choice compared to everything else because, again, the harder content that I have done and I believe in the future is going to be that your healer, if it gets locked out, you are screwed and you do not want your character getting locked out. AKA effect resist by 32%, meaning that you can stop yourself from getting frozen or locked out from healing the party when it matters. And I've done multiple runs on the simulated universe where all it came down to is my healer going to get frozen or is my healer not going to get frozen? Very big. So this one is going to be honestly between a rotation. Like I said, a lot of the light cones and a lot of the different paths are going to be, I use this one for this boss, I use this one for this boss. That's how it's going to be. But you're not going to use this for everything, and I prefer the post-op one. So 32% resist, and then you get healing by an amount that is equal to 45% of effect resist. Outgoing healing can be increased this way, put to up to 27%. So you're going to be bouncing back between these two, and then when you run teams where they do want energy to make the energy combos go a lot faster, and I think somewhere in the future there's going to be a team where it's just pure energy, ults going off every 2 turns for everyone, this is going to be a very solid choice. Now the other two that I'm not mentioning down here, one, this is the battle pass one. I don't like this one too much. I don't believe that this will be good until it's fully maxed out. And we got to wait for multiple battle passes for that to happen. And even then, it's not that great because at max out, it increases wearer's max HP by 32. You're like, okay, my wearer will have 32% extra more HP, which means Natasha and Bailu are going to heal a lot better. And then they're going to heal the team for 4%, right? No, 4% of their respective max HP, aka every ally's HP, they get healed 4%, not your healer's max HP. So keep that in mind. Still very early to say what's going to happen in the future characters, because basically what this does is when you just basic attack, and Natasha does that all the time, you're going to heal the party. But most of the time, especially with main character or a tanker or a taunter, someone who's taking all the damage, you don't need to restore HP. You only need to ult or heal everyone ASAP, not little by little. So at the moment, I see no value for this one. Now, when it comes to shared feelings increases the wearer's outgoing healing by flat stat, 20%. That's good. And when you're using skill regeneration, 4 energy for all allies. So you have to use your skill in order to do this. And for the most part, your healer's not using their skill. They're going Q basic attack most of the turns, and your DPS is taking all the turns for that skill usage. So it is good. It just, on team comps, it's not that great when you think about it, because you have to use your skill. So a quick recap: post-op, perfect timing, quid pro are my top 3. These two, again, not really. And the 5-star, if you get multiple copies, especially from the shop, then cool. For your 3 stars, your bread and butter is this one. Flat 24% increase in healing, or turn manipulation is good, just because if you think about it, well, not manipulation, but you have to go forward, you will get yourself more turns, which means you recharge more energy because you'll do more Qs or more Es depending on what you're using. So not a bad choice either. Now we're going to move on to preservation. So on to preservation, we got 3 characters that can use this: March 7th, Gepard, and the main character Fire, even though it doesn't show it here. Now this setup is going to be really easy to go through because it is straightforward. When it comes to Gepard himself, he likes his 5-star. Yes, March 7 could use this because the effect hit rate will count towards her freezing enemies, and she does work off defense, especially with her barrier. But when it comes to this 5-star, I would just run it on Gepard because it just works that great on him, and it's solid for him. Main character Fire has a lot more going for her than just this. Now, when it comes to the other 5-star here, this is going to be the one you can get from SmellyOctopus Universe, and you're able to max it out, which is really, really good, and its stats are higher than the 4 stars. But overall, I would say that you don't need all of this compared to the other 4 stars that we currently got. But if you do run this, it isn't bad at all. It does give you the wearer's effect resist by 16%. They get a shield equal to 32%, and then damage received decreased by 24%. I think this is really, really good. The only thing is that the Fire main character already has so much built into their kit that this is just adding too much and not enough of everything else. And the trouble I ran into when it came to the SmellyOctopus Universe is that my tank was living through everything, especially without this 5-star light cone. What was happening is my team is getting wiped out, and that's why I think day 1 of my new life is such high value. So what does this do and why it's so good? It gives flat stat 24% defense, which scales with main character. It also scales with March 7 too, and that works beautifully. And then you put this on top of resisting all allies defense or damage resist of all allies by 12%. So main character already takes care of themselves. You need to take care of the team somehow, and throwing 12% damage resist on anything equals your survivability through giant AoE attacks like World 6 Coco. Yes, I'm traumatized. That thing, so many resets. I mean, so many attempts. So I think this is the best value when it comes to the 4 stars. If you have this, use this. If you have multiple copies in the glass world, the mirror world, and the train, you would want 2 copies separate, one for March 7th, one for main character, and both of those characters will be on separate teams, and that way you can make 2 team setups very well. I have 2 copies. I did not put them together because I value them more when it comes to 2 team setups. So another thing to keep in mind. Now, when it comes to trend of the universal market, I can see where you can run this on the main character or March 7th or Gepard, depending on what you're facing, but this is more gimmicky. Your tank is there to tank. They're not there to do damage. Yes, this could make or break a certain quest niche somewhere, but for the most part, you can ignore this and not really worry about it. I'm pretty sure it has its place, but again, this is one of those situations where I use this for the majority of the content, and I'm going to use this for some places. So having more than one option, always good. Now, when it comes to the rest of these, We Are Wildfire is the one that you can farm as a free-to-play. It's in the weekly boss. It's also in the shop, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And overall, it isn't that great. It's only going to be good, and again, in those situations where the first 5 turns you have to survive multiple AoE attacks, then yes, this will have its place. Besides that, no, it's not that great. I would definitely not really worry about this one too much. You are going to be able to farm it to max out, but again, it's only the first 5 turns. Now, when it comes to this one, what I keep saying, main character, tanks, even March 7th throwing taunt on herself, you already have it from the other tanks. They have survivability. They don't need more survivability. Yes, you can use this as your only option because obviously if your tank survives, that's good. They're going to be taking big attacks, but I never ran this. I've always ran this one or the 3-star one on my characters, and my main character plus March 7th have survived perfectly fine the entire time because they just have that much survivability with their shield or their kit. So not necessary to give your tank even more. Maybe down the line when content get harder, yeah, maybe. But most part, you're going to be taking a lot of AoE attacks. Now, this is the Battle Pass one. This is me. This is me is okay. It increases wearer's defense by 32% and then increases their ult damage of that defense by 120%. Actually, I don't even think so. Increase the damage of the wearer when they use their ultimate. That's all. Oh, of the wearer's defense. Yeah, I am right. So that makes March 7th able to do more damage. That makes main characters all to be able to do more damage. But again, that's not their role. Their role is to just be able to break the enemy's break bar. But majority is to soak up and protect the team. So increasing your damage is, again, very situational, but it's not something I would put top on my list. So I already said right here, 3 stars, this would be the best option. 5-star for Gepard, really, really good. Even March 7th could benefit this for a little bit, but when it comes to your actual full setup, this is your bread and butter, day one of my new life. And if you don't have that, then you can go for any of these depending on the situation. But the 3-star is very, very strong and will save your tank in many situations. Same goes for the texture of memories, the 5-star that you can fully max out. I recommend getting the hunt one instead, maxing that one out, then coming to this one because you can use this. It does have the future harder content where the tank actually has to take really big hits, but for now I've literally done everything and that wasn't the case. So you're good with everything else. Alright, so when it comes to Nihility, there is 3 characters, basically Welt, Pella, and Sampu, and they all 3 of them benefit from this entire list here. These light cones all look great on them. This is like Welt's obviously made for him. I currently have this on my Welt. I got super lucky, and this does everything. Increases debuff enemy by 24%. When the wearer uses their skill, the effect hit rate for this attack is increased by 18%, aka Welt can slow them down, and attack increased by 24%. This just literally makes your Welt disgustingly strong. But it also works for Sampu as well, so you can use that, and Pella as well. So no matter what though, straight up 5-star, you have to get super lucky, so we're not going to look at that, but if you do have it, use it. It is huge. This one, exactly what I said before, it is used for the character that's on the card. It increases the wearer's effect hit rate by 20% and dot 24%. But if you have Welt, I would run this on a Welt effect hit rate setup, which makes Welt slow, just constantly hit, and that's what Welt is built for. So this is actually a really strong build for Welt if you go for that kind of setup. This is going to be your actually number 1 over this one over here, which is honestly, I think the best one for all 3 characters that are under Nihility, because this one is really, really good. So when the wearer hits an enemy, and if the hit enemy is not already ensnared, and ensnared doesn't mean it's actually going to slow down the character, it's just the name of the move. Basically what's going to happen, 100% chance to ensnare the hit enemy, and it decreases that enemy by 16%. So it's going to put a debuff called ensnared, and it's going to benefit your entire party. Really, really strong. I actually think this is the best one that's there when it comes to making everyone do extra damage, and lowering an enemy's defense in multiple games is very beneficial than trying to buff your entire team or just single buffs specifically. So this is going to be, I think, the best 4-star that there is. If you're running Sampo or you want to do the effect hit rate, this one is a contender right beside it. Fermata also works really, really well because it increases the break effect. The only thing I don't like about break effect is that when you come to game setups where you use Welt or character manipulation, turn rate, is that if the enemy is broken and you are constantly ahead, you're not going to break them. You're not going to do damage. So break effect falls off on turn order when it comes to enemies not recharging their shield. If they don't recharge their shield, there's nothing you can do. So break effect is very iffy on builds. Really strong right now, depending on your team. My team is super fast, super slow enemy. They never get a chance to really recharge that shield, so it doesn't really benefit too much. But this also does dot damage and all that, so it is a really good one that you can use on Sampo. But for the most part, the Battle Pass one is kind of a skip. It does work. It's basically you do an attack, you do an extra attack. Straightforward, very strong, and you can see which character it might be coming up for later on. Now, When it comes to the 3 stars, I use Loop for Welt. It worked. It worked so good. It was so good. I run this even if I didn't have anything else. This is something you can run. 48% max damage. You run a Welt that's not break effect and actual damage, and that thing will do wonders. Now when it comes to Good Night and Sleep Well, this one's really good as well too. For every debuff the target enemy has, the damage dealt to the wearer increases by 24%, stacking up to 3 times. Basically, it's a stronger loop, and this effect also applies to dodge. So it's the better loop. If you get this, really solid, you can use it. Nothing is bad here. So quick recap. Works on everyone. Works on everyone. Really, really good. Works on 2 of them. And then you got this one, not so great. This works on all 3. Really, probably the strongest one because of decreasing defense. And then you got the situational for dot and extra damage depending on debuff. And then if you're going for only a 3-star, really strong 3-star right here. All right, next up is Harmony, and Harmony is basically Asta, Bronya, and Ting Young, the 3 most broken characters when it comes to just making your team ridiculous, especially Ting Young over here, and Asta for World 6, and Bronya just fits in every team setup. So the light cones, when it comes to these ones, are going to be pretty straightforward. The 5-star is literally made for all 3 of them. It works really well, but it works best on Bronya. So Bronya herself is already busted, and this just makes her even more busted. It gives you the regeneration rate by 10%. It gives you your skill point back, which is really huge because you have to manage your skills depending on some characters and not other characters. You're going Q on this character, Q on this character, and then you're using your skill for other characters, where Bronya will help you bring some of that back, and this 5-star will also do that. So it is really good setup, and then all 3 Harmony characters can benefit from this because all they have to do is activate their skill, increase the next character's damage by 30 to 50% if you maxed it out. So very, very solid choice. 5-star makes sense for pretty much all of them. So the 5-star being one of the best ones for this whole entire setup doesn't mean it's the only one. Some of these 4-stars are also very incredible. Carve the Moon is the Battle Pass one, and I think it's like one of the best Battle Pass choices. The only thing is you're dealing with RNG, and it's going to take you a long time to actually max this out. So you're going to be looking at 10%, 12%, and 6% depending on what you're doing. One's for attack, one's for crit damage, and the other one's regenerating rate increased by 6%. Very good. But I wouldn't have to really worry about it. If you have the Battle Pass, I would definitely consider it, but it is RNG based, and when you need one more than the other, it kind of sucks, but it doesn't matter which one of those stats you get is really good. So Carve the Moon, Weave the Clouds is a very strong one. I really like this one for my team setup specifically because whenever the wearer uses their ultimate, all allies' actions are advanced forward by 24%. I use Asta with my Welt, and again, that's turn manipulation with slowing down the enemy, increasing the speed of my party, and then you advance forward by 24%. And basically what that means, there's these numbers on your little turn rate over here that will increase how forward they move compared to the enemy's turn order. So advance forward is very strong and works really well for that team setup, and overall you can't go wrong with it. I think it's a very powerful one. Now the other one, Past and Future, this one is really strong as well too. When the wearer uses their skill, the next ally taking the action will deal 32% damage, and this works really well again for when you buff, especially with Ting Young. You're going to be buffing someone specifically, and if you buff, let's take for example Dawn. When Dawn is actually targeted by another character, he does 20+% of wind resistance penetration to the enemy. So not only is he gonna get the buff from the character that's doing the buff, he's also gonna get 32% increased damage, not attack. Damage is really, really big when it comes to the calculations. And then he's gonna get his bonus effect as well, which makes him hit for a ton of damage. So Past and Future is another very solid, strong choice. And again, this is a situation depending on what you're facing, what your team comp is. Each of these are not bad to max out. These are all very, very good. Now, when it comes to this one, upon entry, if an ally deals the same damage type as a wearer, damage dealt increased by 24%. Now, this is going to be good for a mono team. So if you're running Asta, you want to run other fire characters. And I feel like this is going to have its place depending when it gets to the situation like, oh, this enemy's weak and I have all these good fire set up. Let me use this team. So it all depends on that situation. This can be very powerful, but it has to be like a mono team to really benefit from it. Now, Memories of the Past is also one I'm currently using because it's like my only choice, but increases the wearer's break effect by 56% at max, and when the wearer attacks, additionally regenerates 8 energy. Really good for Asta. I currently have this at 1, which I don't have multiple copies. This is 28%, and this helped me on World 6 using Asta against Coco. Again, I'm traumatized. So I think this one is very good when you have to break the enemy, because if you don't, they're going to use a powerful attack, and that's going to screw you over. Very good choice. Now, when it comes to the 3 stars, the 3 stars chorus is an awesome one. After entering battle, increases attack of all allies by 12%. Can't go wrong with that. Meshing Cogs is next up. After the wearer uses attack or gets hit, additional regenerates 8 energy. Really strong because you constantly want to get your ult up when it comes to these harmony characters, which is going to buff your team, making everything stronger, or in Asa's case, everything faster as well. So very good 3 stars there. As for the other 3 stars, I'm not really a big fan of like just the entering 1 turn, 3 turn, 5 turns, so not really my thing. But overall, recommendation 5-star obviously, but not the best choice here. Carve the Moon if you like RNG, if you want specific for your teams. That weld setup with Asa, like I talked about, works well, but it works for all the harmony characters. Past and future, very good for Team Young, especially when you buff characters like Dawn who need that buff. It's a triple effect, which is crazy good. And then you got Memories of the Past and Planetary, which are solid choices. So you can't go wrong with any of these, but in the order I just said is pretty much the top tier to low tier. And situational changes that. Alright, when it comes to Erudition, you basically have Herta, Serval, Kinkyu, and Himiko, which your best characters here are going to be Serval and Himiko, unless you want to go AoE farming, then Herta's there. Kinkyu's kit right now is kind of awkward, and I wouldn't really recommend anyone building her. She is Quantum, but you can get away with all the other stats on other characters. So let's talk about the light cones. So for the light cones, no joke, Before Dawn dominates everything. This is actually one of the best light cones I've seen in a while. Increases the wearer's crit rate damage by 36%, increases ultimate damage by 18%. Also, on top of that, they gain this little buff, and when they use it or consume it, their follow-up attack, the damage of that follow-up attack increases by 48%. It is nothing but beneficial at giant numbers at maxed out as well. This thing is incredibly good. This one is made for Himiko and anyone else that has that weakness break. Really good. If you got it, use it. You're not going to doubt it. Doubt yourself for actually putting this on. But these are the 5 stars. Attack increase 50% up to 5 stacks, and then you get the extra 50% there at max. Even at the low numbers, really strong. But those are the 5 stars. If you're going to go for one, it's Before Dawn for everyone. Doesn't matter. So good. Now, when it comes to the 4 stars, this is my favorite, and the way this works is 0.20% per point of energy, and that only gets better the more copies you have, which makes this thing incredible raw damage. Damage increase is probably the best thing you can do in the calculation formula when it comes to buffing. Attack up is always good. It's going to go high, and the more attack you have, the better you're going to hit. But damage increase is just that little bit better in the formula that gives you that much more damage. So this is one of my favorite personally. And the way this works, you look at the character's ultimate, and for the most part, when it comes to Erudition characters, it ranges from 100, 110 on Serval, and then it goes up to 140 on Kinkyu, I think that's what her name is. And when you do the math, it is 20 increase to 28% increase in damage, and that is forever as it goes off your max energy. So the beginning of the fight to the end of the fight, this thing is just massively damage. Really good. And if you max this out, that's at 0.40, so you add another 20% on top of that, so you're doubling that damage. Incredible. Now the next thing that stands right beside that is this one, Genius Repose, but this one is more situational depending on what you're doing. Increases the wearer's attack by 32%, which is really good, and again increases the wearer's crit damage for 3 turns if it defeats an enemy. There's gonna be a lot of situations where you're not going to defeat an enemy, so this is not going to be the best thing. Say you're facing a boss who's just by themselves, like in World 5 against Kafka, then you're not going to be able to do anything with this, and you're only getting that 32% increase, where the other one is much better. So really good setup. Like I said, you're going to switch between one or the other depending on what you have, and crit damage is very important as well as doing maximum damage. So if your crit rate is high, I would say go for this one, but not really. This one's still a lot better. Now this one is just straight up ultimate damage and energy regen, so if you want to do big damage, it's really good. And when it comes to the Birth of Self, this one's good for basically Herta and Himiko. It is 96% damage for Herta, and Himiko you'll get that 48% for the follow-up attacks. So really strong, straightforward. But the bread and the butter here is just, this is a free farm one, and I love this one. Increases the wearer's damage by 24%, period. And that's not attack up, increasing your stats. That's just damage formula again, which is really strong, and you get to max this one as a free-to-play player. And for everyone defeated enemy, the attack increased by 8% up to 3 times. So actually, yeah, I would use this one if you're free to play and you're super unlucky and didn't get anything else. That is the one you want to go for. When it comes to 3 stars, 3 stars are basically ult damage up. If you use your ult, attack up for 2 turns, very high attack up, 48% I believe at max, and then passkeys for energy. So again, choice is Before Dawn. before anything else. And then 1, 2 situational, alt damage, 3 if you're using Herta, and then this one for everyone if you're free to play and you have nothing else. Very strong. So next up is the Hunt, and this is probably the one you're going to be looking at the most, especially for everyone, because this is your damage dealers. You're either using Dan, Susang, Sealy, or Yanking, and this one's going to be pretty straightforward. So if you're like every other free-to-play here, the Cruising in the Sea is the best one from the actual shop, from the simulated universe. And base stats, you're going to have this max. We're going to look at max. Increases wearer's crit rate by 16% and increases the crit rate of the enemy if the enemy's HP is at below 50%. So you're going to get 32% crit rate if you're facing an enemy that's a half HP. Really, really strong, especially when it comes to characters that want to build that. And then later on, if you kill an enemy, you're going to increase your attack by 40% for 2 turns. So that just works overall, and it's free. Now, when it comes to the other 5 stars, it's Sealy for the Sealy, which makes sense, right? It's kind of silly. And this is really, really incredible. Like, you get this. This is the one to use, right? Increases wearer's crit rate by 30%. Basic attacks are going to be increased by 10%, and crit damage of their ultimate is increased by 20%. This effect can stack up to 6 times. Huge. Is really good for every 10 speed. So that's basically, you know where that goes. And now Sleep Like the Dead is another really strong 5-star. Increases wearer's crit damage by 50%. And when it comes to like actually doing damage, you want crit damage, damage percentage, and then raising your attack is how you want to go. So anything that increases your crit damage is how you're going to do the maximum damage when facing an enemy, and then damage percentage. So this is really, really strong. And also it increases the crit rate by 60% if you do not crit. So that is really, 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 really good. So you can't go wrong with any 3 of these. These are actually stronger depending on the character. And I believe Sleep Like the Dead is very strong overall, period. Now, when it comes to the 4 stars, I think this is the best one, Swordplay. And the reason being is that for each time the wearer hits the same target, damage dealt increased by 16%. Now, this doesn't have to do multiple turns. This is hitting the target. So if you do an attack that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hits, you already increase that entire stack of 16% to the 5 times. And it will be dispelled when the wearer changes target. You're basically be facing bosses and killing one target over and over. So as long as your character does multiple hits, the stack increases to 5. You don't have to wait multiple turns. So I love Sword Place the most. I don't own it, which makes me really sad. And now the next up is Only Silence, in my opinion, because it has just base stats. You don't have to do anything. Increases wearer's attack by 32%. If there are 2 or fewer enemies, 24% crit rate up. Which is one of those situations, again, if you're facing single target, this is the one you want to put on. If not, then it's the other one, especially if you need crit rate. Now, when it comes to subscribe for more, this one's actually really good, but I wouldn't choose this over the other 2. It increases the damage of the wearer's base attack and skill by 40%. This effect increases by an extra 48% when the wearer's current energy reaches its max. So you kind of have to manipulate the whole situation of don't use your ult, use your skill, and then use your ult, and then it has to drop off and you don't get that bonus effect, which the other ones have crit damage, which is way better. So I think subscribe for more is more like in 3rd place for me. But then you have the free one you can farm, and this one is really nice. After entering the battle, increases the wearer's speed by 12%. Speed is really, really good. And damage, again, damage is better than attack percentage. Damage by 24%. When the wearer takes damage, this effect will disappear, and then you got away. So it's good if you're facing an enemy that's not going to be doing a lot of AoE attacks and your tank is taunting everything and nothing's hitting this character. Very, very, very strong, but I prefer the other one. Swordplay, Only Silence, subscribe for more than this one. But if you're free to play, you're going to use this and try to build a team and go into situations where there's no AoE attacks. Battle Pass one, not the biggest fan. I think later on it's going to be a lot better. Increases crit rate by 24%. And after a crit hit, there's a 32% to dispel an enemy's buff. Later on, it's going to be very important to do this in many situations, but being a battle pass and how long you have to wait to max this out again, not the greatest choice, and I prefer the other ones for quite a while until we find that niche fight that you have to remove a buff or your team's going to be wiped without the right team. So situational and is paid. So it all depends how you play. As for the 3 stars, Darting Arrows is pretty good. When the wearer defeats an enemy, increases attack by 48% for 3 turns. So that can work. And then you got when the wearer defeats an enemy, increases speed. So depends on the build you want to go for. And then Arrows is obviously, it's okay. It's not. It's 3 turns. I don't like those ones. So that is it. That's my recommendations for the Hunt. All right, last up is Destruction. These are the 3 characters, Arlen, Hook, and Clara being my favorite when it comes to this, obviously being the 5-star, but that's not the reason. Now, oh, wrong place. The reason is that Destruction, they have the 5-star that you can get from the shop, and this one is actually pretty good. As long as your character has good amount of attack is really strong. So you're going to increase your attack by 60% whenever the wearer attacks in battle up to 4 times. So that's really big stack, and you're going to stack that on top of everything else. It's not damage increasing, and it's not crit damage or crit rate, but it's still very, very powerful. When the wearer inflicts weakness break on enemies, the wearer's damage increases by 24% for 2 turns, which makes this very powerful, and its base stat is 529. So On the Fall is a free one that you can get from SmellyOctopus Universe. Very strong. If you have the Destruction character, then go for it. I think it's great, but there's actually 4 stars that you don't need to choose this one over the Hunt one. I prefer if you got the Hunt one instead of this one, and then later on down the line when you finally choose this one as your last option or second option, you max it out, you can use it. But the 4 stars for this are very strong. Before we jump into that, if you get Clara and you get this, your Clara just doesn't die and just so strong, especially when it comes to SmellyOctopus Universe and certain blessings. My god. Increases the wearer's attack by 40% when the wearer defeats an enemy or is hit. You immediately get 12% HP back, and then on top of that, it increases the wearer's damage is increased by 40% until the end of turn. It's just so good. It's so good. Now, like I've been talking about through the whole entire video, and when it comes to crit damage being strong, and then you got damage percentage up, the Secret Vow is like your secret 4-star that's better than 5-star. Increases damage dealt by the wearer by 20%. The wearer also deals an extra 20% of damage to the enemy with a higher HP percentage than the wearer. So if your HP is not high on your character, you're going to be doing 40% damage increase, and that's going to go up to 80%. Ridiculous. And this is from the beginning to the end of the fight. Really, really strong. I think if you have this one, that is the bread and butter right there. So the next option is Mole Welcomes You, and I'm not saying this one second, but it is nice that whatever you do is going to increase your attack by 24%, and it goes up to multiple stacks. I'm not sure on the number how many stacks there is, but it seems like it has a ton of potential. So I actually like that one just because you are going to be doing what you're doing, constantly hitting the enemy. Now the other one, Under the Sky, this one's okay. Increases the wearer's attack by 32% at max, and when the wearer defeats an enemy, the wearer's crit rate increases by 24% for 3 turns. Situational, again, a lot of places. If there is multiple enemies, this one's great because I like the crit rate up and it gives you attack percentage up. But the Secret Vow is still that much stronger. Now the Battle Pass one is kind of whatever. Increases wearer attack by 48%. Flat damage. Whenever the wearer defeats an enemy, they restore HP to 24%. So it's just increased damage, which again, the Vow is better. This one has crit rate, and this one keeps stacking more than 48%, I believe. I could be wrong on that. So the Battle Pass one, I'm not really a huge fan, but it's still really good because at least it's just 48%, period, and you get some vampire effect. Now, Wolf Walk Time is actually one of my favorites. Increases the wearer's attack by 20% and increases their damage to enemies afflicted with burn or bleed by 32%. So you get the buff plus the better damage dealer of 32%, and that also applies to Dot. So this works really, really well for Hook, but it still works well overall. Now, when it comes to recommendation, a Secret Vow, if you get it, use it. The Moles Welcome You, Into the Under the Blue Sky is situational, and then Wolf Walk Time works well. 5-star, this is Clark, can work on anyone else. And then On the Fall, once you have this maxed out, it is going to be really good, especially the more attack you get down the line. Now, when it comes to 3-star, Collapsing Sky, great, absolutely amazing. Attack and skill damage, 40%, can't go wrong. For the other 3 stars, this one's good. It's just I don't like that after the 50% is done of once they go below 50%, you get nothing out of this. So I don't know if I like that one too much. And then this one is, again, situational. The wearer's current HP is below 80%, increases crit rate, which everything else just does a lot better. So the Collapsing Sky is probably my favorite out of that. And that is the entire video, guys. I hope you enjoy this. Hopefully you found this helpful. If you do, great. If you guys ever want to catch my live streams, I stream over at twitch.tv/SmellyOctopus. I'm there every day except for Saturdays. I also got a Discord. If you guys want to check that out, all the links are down below. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching. Keep on smiling, and I'll smell you later.